So, in this series on automotive industry on Lex Prudence podcast, for the past several weeks, we have been discussing various areas relevant for an OEM and important for a legal resource to work on. In this last episode of the series, we'll do a quick recap of the issues that we discussed and then quickly touch base on a couple of issues which I'm not going to cover uh, in this series, but are relevant issues, and maybe we'll deal with them in some later episodes if the time comes. Hello, friends. My name is Amol Apte, and you are listening to me on the Lex Prudence podcast, where I try to bring certain relevant legal topics and simplify them for everyone's understanding. If you have not had an opportunity to listen to the past episodes on the Lex Prudence podcast, then do give it a try on my YouTube channel. I'm sure you will find them relevant and interesting. So let us do a quick recap of what we have discussed in this series. As you all know, we were discussing the areas which may be relevant and important for an OEM. I classified them in some 7 different heads, and I've already discussed 5 of them in detail. And as I said before, 2 of them are very detailed subjects in their own right, and therefore I'm not covering them in this series. Maybe at some later time I will cover them, or I'll try to cover them. So without any further delay, what are the subjects that we touched base upon? First, we discussed the critical areas of dealership agreement. Dealership is the backbone of OEM industry because those are uh, their fronts from where the sales actually take place. So the dealers are the ones who are the faces of OEMs, representing them on the field in different territories, sell their products, and also provide the after sale services. And therefore, in my view, dealership agreement was one of the most critical areas for an in house legal resource working for an OEM to look into. We looked into various aspects of dealership agreements, right from the relationships to warranties to sales and after sales to account settlements, terminations, etc., etc. And mind you, these are only some of the topics that are important to be covered in dealership agreements, and a legal resource needs to be careful about. I'm not saying that this is an exhaustive list, but it is a good suggestive list for you to take care of. Next, we started discussing upon the suggestions that the FADA, that is Federation of Automotive Dealers Association, has made and given out a model dealership agreement, or as they call it, MDA. We also discussed my views on the proposed clauses, which uh, uh, which in some cases were contrary to what FADA had suggested, but with a rationale to justify my stand. And as I said before, I am making these episodes from the point of view of an OEM, and therefore there may be some areas which I think are not in the interest of OEMs in the MDA that FADA has suggested. After discussing MDA, we then moved on to discussing the product warranties. Again, one of the very, very critical areas for an OEM because they make a lot of expenditure on providing for these warranty related services, and it makes an important part of their after sales business. And therefore, we discussed in detail about what warranty is, how it works, what are all the rights and obligations that it creates on the parties involved, etc., etc. Then from there we moved on to discuss on another critical area for an OEM, which is around the employment law, and to be very specific, on contract labor. We understood the basics of what the law prescribes on contract labor, and then went on to discuss some of the important issues that a legal resource working for OEM needs to take into consideration while dealing with the sensitive matter of contract labor. We also understood as to what the act actually intends to do when it prescribes certain provisions for contract laborers. And then we finally moved on to the contagious issue of managing litigation and discussed more on the processes that, if developed and designed properly within an organization, can make life simpler for an in-house counsel when it comes to managing the litigation portfolio. Mind you, we did not discuss technicalities or the technical legal aspects about the litigation, but we discussed about the processes that can be developed, tools that can be used, and certain things as process that can be followed within an organization. And in my opinion, if those are followed to the T, it can make life simpler for an organization which is litigation heavy, and the number of litigations to be managed by a small team of lawyers is high. So, in this context, we spoke about the MIS maintenance, panel of lawyers, panel review exercises, template creations, then litigation management tools, and all such other aspects, which, if handled and managed properly, can take a lot of burden off the shoulders of the in house counsel. Now, after discussing all these in last past few weeks, 6 or 7 weeks to be precise, there are a couple of areas that I'm not covering in this series, but they are relevant for the OEM industry and they are important. Why I'm not covering them? Because they are larger issues and I may not be able to cover them as part of one series. And I think that at least one of that subject, or rather the two of those subjects, will need a detailed series to be made. And therefore, I'm leaving them out. But to make a mention of those subjects, the first one is commercial contracts other than the dealership agreements. Now, why I'm not making an episode on commercial contracts other than the dealership contracts? Because in my view, commercial contracts is a larger subject and it needs to be agnostic to an industry when we discuss it in legal terms. And therefore, I plan to do a separate series solely on commercial contracts, which is agnostic to the industry. And I assume that should cover this topic well in detail. The second one is about auto finance. This, to my mind, is more of an NBFC, which is non banking financial corporation, or a financial service sector kind of a topic than an automobile industry kind of a topic. And therefore, in this series, I don't intend to cover it. Of course, auto industry will have its own nuances around the subject, but in general, it's a financial service industry related subject, and therefore, this series does not cover it. At some point in future, if I'm able to gather enough information around this, and if I'm able to create adequate content around that information, I would want to create a separate series or at least a couple of episodes around the auto finance business and the legalities around the same as a topic on the Lex Prudence podcast. So I hope all of you like the effort that I have put into compilation and recording of this series, and hope that I'll be able to make better efforts resulting in engaging discussions on Lex Prudence podcast in future. With this, I wish to end this series. Please subscribe to the channel to get updates on new episodes that I'll come up with and I upload on the channel. And if you like it, do share it with the people you think may want to listen to these subjects as well. So, till I come back with new episodes, which I hope is going to happen soon. Thank you so much and namaskar. See you soon.